Hello, hello. This is going to be the first episode ever with audio, and I think that's pretty cool. Basically, what I decided to do is sometimes I'll have people on, and we're going to talk about discussions, like really stupid or really interesting and theoretical debates. And one of those episodes is going to come out soon, but for now, it is just me. So, let's get into it, I guess. Today, sorry, excuse me. Today, I wanted to discuss whether a hot dog is a sandwich or not. So, what I believe is a hot dog is a sandwich because a hot dog is just a piece of meat in between a piece of bread. Now, you may argue, well, sandwiches are two pieces, slices of bread, but that's of the same loaf. But if you want to say it's a hot dog is one piece of bread and a sandwich is two pieces, then what would a sub be? Because a sub sometimes does not get cut all the way and it's technically just one long piece of bread. So, would that make a sub a hot dog or would that make a sub a sandwich and therefore making hot dog subs? Now, I argue that it does, and I think that all three are technically sandwiches, but not all of them are hot dogs or subs. Now, because they can be placed in their own category. But if I was going to say if a hot dog was a sandwich, I'd say yes, it is. But then you have to argue. I think a hot dog is a sandwich, but what about things like stuffed breads, cheese bread, like a grilled cheese? Is that just stuffed bread or is that a sandwich? Because does a sandwich need to have a meat or high dense protein? Because I understand cheese is protein, but a protein besides cheese? Because cheese is added onto sandwiches all the time, but not as the main protein. So would that make a grilled cheese a sandwich or just stuffed bread? Now, I argue that no. Stuffed bread and sandwiches are two very different things. Like, I get garlic bread all the time. I would not call that a sandwich. It's garlic bread with cheese and garlic in the middle. It's just bread with cheese in the middle. And I would not count that as a sandwich. I think a sandwich has to have, by by just proxy, more than two ingredients in the main part of the sandwich. I'm not talking about condiments or butters or etc. etc. I'm just talking about main ingredients like lettuce, vegetables, etc. etc. Now, I think that stuffed bread is a whole category of its own. It's its own piece of cheese and just bread, stuffed bread. I wouldn't call a bread stuffed with just spinach a sandwich either. It would be a spinach stuffed bread with cheese probably. But would that be a sandwich since it does have more than two ingredients? And I would be criticizing myself here if I said I didn't. But I think that it depends on the variety and variety. Fuck, god damn it. The variety of the breads, I guess. Now, what about pies? Pies are usually encapsulated, but some do have tops. I've argued that one piece of bread, or bread like thing, or bread based, flour based, dough based, etc., would be a sandwich because it doesn't have to be two pieces. But, sorry, excuse me. I think that a piece of bread is considered more of like a loaf. So I would not count a pie as a sandwich, but what about quiches? Are quiches pies? Because all they really are savory pies, but then you think, well, pies are usually sweet and have a top piece. But you have to argue, well, pumpkin pie usually doesn't have a top piece. Would that make it a quiche? But I looked into it and it turns out that quiches are usually egg based and usually have a different type of textured crust. Still a crust, but not the same texture. But what about chicken pot pie? Beef pot pies and so forth. These are also pies, but they're savory. But they usually have the top. So, but they're also not egg based. So would that make them a quiche or a pie? I think that chicken pot pies are inherently a actual dinner food and not a dessert, but it does have the same tendencies and consistent labeling and right coordinates to become a pie. So I guess a chicken pot pie is in fact a pie, but a quiche is not. I think that quiches are like a tart, a very large savory tart. But tarts are also usually god damn it, how am I gonna have to follow this? A tart is not a quiche, but a quiche is a tart. If you understand, if you catch my flow and my drift, if you will. Now, what about other things like tacos and burritos and things that are completely encased? Now, sure, it's one piece of bread, and I did state that, but it's wrapped, and there's no part of the innards showing. Whilst sandwiches usually do have an innards piece showing, like the sides of the bread, or the top of a quiche for tart's sake. I would say that burritos and wraps are kind of in their own area. It fits the primary basis of a sandwich, but does not have the same form. Now, would the form indicate a sandwich or not? Or would it more be about the ingredients? Because burritos do, and wraps definitely, usually have a protein, a vegetable, along with condiments, salts, peppers, spices, etc. So I think that burritos are of their own mind. And I realized I didn't turn on streamer mode for this. I'm so silly. Anyways, I think burritos are and wraps are of their own category. But what about tacos? Because tacos are innards showing, but they are almost like a hot dog. I would argue that tacos are technically hot dogs, and hot dogs are technically tacos because they fit the same premise. You can have just a meat taco, and you can have just a meat sausage, in a bun. But you can also have like vegetables and like other proteins like chili dogs and dogs like chili dogs with onions and different vegetables. It would be silly to argue that a taco is not just a sandwich, but also a hot dog. A taco is a hot dog, making it a sandwich, but it feels so strained and so far away from what a sandwich's concept would be. So I guess tacos are hot dogs, but not sandwiches. So does that make hot dogs its own family, or would it still be a subcategory of sandwich? Hmm. I'm thinking about this one on my own. I'm having an argument with myself. Hmm. I guess tacos are not quite of their own vein because they do fit a hot dog, but a hot dog is more fitting to a sandwich than it is a taco. But a taco is more fitting to a hot dog than it is of its own category, because I feel like you have soft shell tacos and hard shell tacos and different types of ways to make tacos. Like, it doesn't just have to be like beef. There are shrimp tacos, and that's the same variety as a sandwich, but not quite the parameters of what a sandwich would think in mind. Hot dog was not very much of a stretch. It was soft bread along with meat inside. Along same with a sandwich. But hot dogs, like I was saying about the cheese, must usually have more than two ingredients. But I argue that the hot dog, since it has like a primary ingredient in making sandwiches, it would technically count as a sandwich like thing. Sorry, I'm losing my own train of thought here. Um, because you can't really have a lettuce sandwich, but I'd argue that meat is a primary ingredient in a sandwich, or at least a large protein. It would be, I guess a hot dog could technically be counted as stuffed bread, but I don't feel like that's right. I think you can have lettuce stuffed bread, but I don't think you could have meat stuffed bread. That would be almost a sandwich. But then you bring into the concept of sausage rolls, a hot sandwich wrapped in a full round bread, but with the inner layers showing through the sides. So, would you argue that a sausage is a hot dog? Would you argue that it's a sandwich? Because I argued that tacos are built almost just like no sorry wraps are almost built just like that, except for without the inner layers showing. Would a sausage roll be a open burrito, or a different type of wrap, or would it be considered a hot dog or a sandwich? Now, sausage rolls, I think, are usually baked, making it very different to how most sandwich would be considered, because most sandwiches are just toasted after being baked in an oven for the actual bread. So I believe that sandwiches don't have to be toasted, but they make them better. I like the crunch. So I wouldn't. I guess you could count the sausage roll as a soft, non-toasted sandwich because it's been baked and it has meat inside of it. But would you argue that the meat already being baked inside it makes it one thing, or does it still make it two separate part things? Because you can have just bread rolls and you can have just sausage. So would this becoming its own thing make it one ingredient or two? I think personally that sausages are more related to burritos and wraps than they are sandwiches. And you can disagree with me if you'd like. But I do believe that sausages inside of bread are not always wraps, but they sometimes are with sausage rolls. Because a sausage roll is like a hot dog, and you could consider a sausage roll as a strange looking hot dog. Because it is just one piece of bread with meat, as I was saying. So, I think that part is up for debate in the comments, but I think in total, we've come to the conclusion that sausages do not have to be in sandwiches, they can be in wraps and other things. Hot dogs are, in fact, a sandwich. Tacos are hot dogs, but not quite a sandwich. Things like subs and hot dogs alike and burritos are kind of in their own subcategories, except for wraps and burritos are more of their own thing. So at the end of the day, everything can technically be related to a sandwich if you really tried. But I think some of these delicious and delectable ways to eat food should have their own categories, like the pies and the tarts. It's just they're their own thing, and we gotta let them be, and we gotta let them bread. Good night, everyone.